Hello, everybody. I'm Scott.
Hello, and I'm Andy.
Welcome to Tea and Timbits, global perspectives on business development to help you prosper. Good to see you, Andy.
Nice to see you again, Scott. It's been a whole week since last time.
I'm glad that was your reaction. Thank you. We're going to talk about job interviewing today. Specifically how not to tank a job interview, because it seems to be so easily tanked. We'll get into that in a moment, but you mentioned that you had a reflection from the past week, so please share with us.
Yes, I do. So I had it was something that I learned that well, I mean, that's kind of
you
the
knew
point
everything, Andy.
But we had a situation where we were going into a big negotiations. So I was there as an observer as part of the negotiation process, and it had taken a lot of time and effort to get to this point, and so it was a really positive situation that we were going into this negotiation, that my customer had been invited to the table to have this negotiation. However, when we got there was a lack of willingness, shall we say, from my client side to share any information with the prospective client of theirs, and they were expecting their customer or their prospective customer to share everything with them, and get all of that information on the table, but they were not willing to reciprocate or share any of their information. And I kind of felt that was a normal thing that you do, when you're in a negotiation process, that you're both very open to create that trusting environment and to create a situation where everybody feels comfortable, that all the cards are on the table, and you're playing on a level playing field to get to the same goal. You want to provide your service, they want to buy your service, and that by doing so will achieve a goal that you've both agreed on. So getting to that point, it seemed logical that this was, now cards on the table. Here we are. This is the best solution for everyone. No, they weren't prepared to do that, and it's a learning for me, really, that quite frankly, you need to be willing to disclose, all of your variables like cost and values, and any other relevant factors that are going to be negotiated, because without doing so, you don't create that trusting environment, and you don't demonstrate a commitment to a mutual goal. It becomes very much a one-sided thing, and as a result, obviously, they did not win the deal.
Right.
And my lesson there is to make sure that first of all you go in with a good plan, and that you workshop it beforehand, and that you're willing to share information to build trust.
I mean, I think obviously that happens even in sort of low stakes, quote unquote, negotiations and conversations, and it happens all the time with pricing, right? With even the simplest deal, it's like, well, what's your price? What are your costs? What's going to go into that? And I'll tell you that, like, we've had some good coaching in our business, and if you don't just get right into it, it doesn't prevent you from saying, you know what, listen, you're squeezing me too tight, and I've been pretty transparent, and now I'm going to have to withdraw from the opportunity myself, because I'm running a business and this isn't going to work for me. So I hope your other vendors have a different business model that makes this work for you. Fascinating that we've all been in those situations where it is a fundamental lack of trust, which is just a bad place to start.
Correct.
No matter which side of the table sort of presents that friction. Anyway, thank you for sharing. Getting into our topic, we're going to do a left turn here. Sometimes the preamble ties right in. There's a segue, but I don't think there is one today.
Not today,
no. Job interviews. Recruiting is a big part of every business leader's day. Not every day, but personally, I quite like recruiting and interviewing and talking to people. And I've had my fair share of really bad ones, and I've had my share of good ones. But we are hoping from this conversation today that whether or not you are interviewing somebody else, recruiting, or a candidate, that you
Correct. Yeah.
think about how to make sure that this moment works for you. Andy, do you want to tell us a little bit about some of your experiences recruiting and interviewing and where you've seen this whole thing fall apart for one party or the other?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of finding good ways to tank an interview, I think we could do an entire podcast series just on that. But
The whole thing, yeah.
but to summarize here, I think we should focus on this, mid-level job interviews where people who have enough experience that they should know better, but come in and demonstrate something completely different, and yet still have a high expectation of being successful for some reason. Biggest issues I find is preparation, not knowing enough about the company that you're going to work for, their industry, or the value that you could potentially bring. It's especially in the world of sales and business development, very, very clear example of how they are going to perform in a sales environment, because if they cannot sell themselves effectively and they cannot do all of the work to promote themselves, then they're definitely not going to do it for something that they don't care about as much as they do themselves. So if you come into an interview and you're not prepared, if you come into an interview and you don't know about the company that you're interviewing with, and you come into an interview and you don't know about the industry that you're selling into or the customers, then you probably shouldn't be in that interview if you're going into a sales or business development role.
Well, or any other role. I mean, this is the example that I had in mind before we hit the
Okay. All right. Yeah.
You know, we have a variety of different sort of roles, but many of our contributors and our staff are technical contributors.
Okay.
And we have technical interviews. We go through scenarios and we look at code and things like that. And we hire interns on a regular basis. And I will go in and present to a college university class,
Okay.
to advertise that we're looking. And I will tell them the interview scenario like weeks ahead of time. And I'll say, if you come and interview with us, we're going to ask you this question.
Okay.
And I've been told by the people that conduct the interviews on our side, please tell them, so that they can come in with some sort of preparation done. Because of course, even if you know the answer, we can then dig in and let's go into your thinking and how you arrived at the conclusion, and did you just copy it off your friend or look it up on the internet. But we're absolutely astounded at the number of people that come in going, oh yeah, right, you did mention that that's what we're going to talk about today. And they sort of
really,
oh yeah, it happens.
Do you end it then, or do you let them suffer for a little while and then end
that's
it?
The other part of this that I thought we should get into, which is, what do you do as a hiring manager when you know almost instantaneously or at some point during the interview this person's not going to move forward? Do you
From my perspective,
yeah.
Always, if it becomes clear to me that they've not done the preparation that I referred to just now, I flag it up. I say, look, you've come into this, you're not prepared, you're not demonstrating to me that you can do this job. I think it's probably best for both of us if we end this interview now and respect each other's times and company.
Right. Yes. I mean, I maybe it's just, a different way of delivering that, but essentially the same thing. Thank you for that. Listen, how are you feeling about the way this is going so far? We were looking for a stronger answer there. Would you like, to continue a little bit longer?
I've got nice in Canada, aren't you?
Questions, but we won't drag it out for the full time just for the sake of it. And sometimes, you are going, but the other thing I do is up front, I book them for a half hour or an hour or whatever. But at the top, I say, listen, these interviews actually don't take the full time. We just book them in case we need a little bit more room to go deeper, or in case the conversation gets off track or whatnot. We have the space in everybody's calendar. Plus, I'm going to do some follow up and get my notes in order after we converse. So I need the balance of the hour myself, and that way you can dismiss them after a certain amount of time, or you say, you know what, thanks, that's been great so far. But absolutely, I will. I think there's an obvious point when it's not when there's a professional unfit. Both parties kind of realize that, and absolutely will say, okay, well, it doesn't feel like this is lining up quite well for either one of us. If you think there's anything I haven't understood, let me know, but I'm happy to leave it there. And I will say that like 99% of the time they're like, yeah, no, okay. And then it's just done and there's no lingering anything. So it's, yeah. And it's,
No, that's
you're
right.
one of many, many, many conversations that person is probably having at the moment.
I also have an opinion, which you may have picked up on. That if you're having a job interview and you're meeting with me for a job interview, I expect you to wear a tie.
Oh,
It's you know, if you're going for a professional role, I mean, I don't interview for people who are not going for professional roles, so I don't think there's any excuse if a man, if a man turns up not wearing a tie,
but I mean,
it's noted. They're gonna have to. It's not an instant no, but it's very much a okay, an observation. Also, if they don't polish their shoes,
interesting. I mean, is that
I mean, I
primarily
have a military
for
background, and I grew up going to private school, so I've been wearing ties and polishing shoes since I was a little boy, and so for me, there's no excuse of not doing it when you're a grown man.
Right. Well, I left all that at the doorstep of my high school graduation. So as you can tell, I'm less particular about that. I need, you know, I think in different roles in the business, you need a certain amount of presentability and professionalism, and there is an expectation that when we're in person with a client, that we're appropriately presentable. But if you are otherwise sort of a technical contributor, that is almost completely irrelevant. So it doesn't matter.
That's right.
But I don't.
And 9 out of 10 times now, people are not wearing ties to work, to to their business meetings and so on. I mean, I very often don't wear a tie if I'm going out for some meetings,
for a run.
I already know, but yeah, for a run. But most of the time, for a first meeting with someone, I'll wear a tie still.
I do think to err on the side of caution, you dress above the position and the role and the person that you are interviewing for. That I think that is always good advice. Nobody discounts you for added presentation and professionalism from that front, but you definitely get discounted for not considering it.
Yeah, especially if you're interviewing with me.
There you go. So what should people take away from this conversation, Andy? Is this just for people that want to interview with you, or is there something you'd like our listeners to know?
Be prepared.
Yeah.
Know the company you're going to interview with. Ideally, know the people who you're going to meet for the interview. I mean, people exist on social media. You can look them up. And, for example, if they're going to interview with you, they go, oh, I've been watching some of your LinkedIn Live, Scott. I've been listening to your podcast. I read some of the articles that you've published. These are my thoughts on them. That's going to have a huge impact and a positive takeaway to you, because you're going to know that they're interested in the industry, they're interested in you, they're interested in the business. So, there's a big takeaway from just doing a little bit of pre-work and research, but there's a big negative impact if you don't do it. And also wear a tie, polish your shoes.
All right. Well, and I'll just add that if you are an interviewer, give a little space and give yourself a structure in the interview to exit early, so that you're not wasting everybody's time, and that there's a certain professionalism and courtesy that you can establish at the beginning to allow that to happen easily for both parties.
Exactly.
Good chat.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Andy. You can find us, as we always say, at Tea and Timbits. I always enunciate that because I was on a call with somebody else who said your podcast is Tea and Tidbits. It's like, no. I'll let people continue to Google that one, but teaandtimbits.com. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks very much. Bye.